Captain Kang Woo-jin walked through the shining hallways of the Nova Genesis like he owned the entire galaxy. His black uniform was perfectly pressed, and his captain's badge gleamed under the soft blue lights. At only 28, he was the youngest person ever to command a Galactic Federation starship, and he made sure everyone knew it. The Nova Genesis wasn't just any ship. It was a floating palace among the stars, designed for the wealthy and powerful beings who traveled between worlds. Crystal walls sparkled like diamonds, and the floors were made from polished stones found only on distant planets. Holographic art from 100 different worlds decorated the corridors, and soft music played from hidden speakers. Woo-jin loved this ship because it reminded him daily that he was special. Better than the aliens he transported. Better than the humans who barely deserved to breathe the same air. In his mind, humans were nothing more than space dust that had accidentally learned to walk upright. The first-class cabin was his favorite place to remind passengers of the natural order. Here, the seats were made from the finest materials in the galaxy. Each passenger had their own private space with windows that showed the incredible beauty of deep space. Stars streaked past like silver ribbons, and distant planets glowed like colorful jewels. That's when he saw her. Dr. Amara Johnson sat in seat 7A, completely focused on the holographic display floating in front of her. The blue light from her data charts reflected off her dark skin, creating patterns that danced across her face. She wore an expensive black suit that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and small diamond earrings caught the light when she moved her head. But Woo-jin saw none of her elegance. He saw only her human features and felt his anger rising like fire in his chest. She was reading through what looked like medical charts, her fingers moving quickly through the holographic data. Numbers and graphs swirled round her as she worked, completely absorbed in whatever she was studying. Her movements were precise and confident, like someone who had spent years mastering her craft. The other passengers in first class were a mix of differ and alien species. There was a tall, blue-skinned Altarian businessman reviewing trade agreements. A family of crystal-like beings from the Vega system sparkled softly as they shared a quiet meal. Two robotic representatives from the machine collective sat motionless, their red eyes occasionally blinking as they processed information. All of them were what Woo-jin considered proper passengers, beings with advanced technology, ancient civilizations, or vast wealth, not humans who had barely figured out how to leave their own solar system a few hundred years ago. Woo-jin straightened his shoulders and marched toward Dr. Johnson's seat. His boots clicked loudly on the polished floor, and several passengers looked up to see what was happening. He wanted them to watch. He wanted them to see him put this human in her place. "You," he said, his voice cutting through the quiet cabin like a laser blast. "This section is for civilized beings only. Move to a colony where your kind belongs." Dr. Johnson slowly looked up from her work. Her dark eyes met his without fear or anger. There was something in her gaze that made Woo-jin feel uncomfortable, like she was looking right through him and seeing something he didn't want anyone to see. "I have a valid first-class ticket, Captain," she said quietly. Her voice was calm and steady, without any hint of the submission he expected. This made Woo-jin even angrier. How dare she speak to him like an equal? How dare she sit there so calmly while he was trying to teach her a lesson? "Humans don't deserve luxury," he spat, raising his voice so every passenger in the cabin could hear. "Your primitive species should be grateful we even allow you aboard our ships. You should be thanking us for the chance to ride in the cargo." "Hold." The blue-skinned Altarian businessman looked shocked. The Crystal family stopped eating and stared. Even the robots turned their heads to watch. The cabin fell completely silent except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Dr. Johnson looked round at all the watching faces, then back at Woo-jin, for a moment. He thought she might argue with him or cause a scene. Instead, she simply nodded once and returned to her holographic display. "I'll stay right here, Captain," she said softly, her fingers already moving through her data again. The alien passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some looked embarrassed by what they had witnessed. Others seemed confused about why their captain was treating a paying passenger so badly. But none of them said anything. None of them stood up for her. Woojin felt a surge of satisfaction. He had shown everyone who was in charge. He had reminded them all of the natural order of things. Humans at the bottom, real civilizations at the top. He turned and walked away, his chest puffed with pride, completely unaware that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The Nova Genesis hummed with activity as the crew prepared for departure. Captain Woojin stood on the bridge, watching the final boarding procedures through the massive viewing screen. The space station outside looked like a giant metal flower, with ships of all sizes docked at its many arms. Cargo vessels, personal shuttles, and military cruisers moved in perfect formation, creating a beautiful dance among the stars. Woojin felt proud as he watched his ship's systems come online. Green lights flickered across the control panels, and the engines began their deep, powerful rumble. Soon they would jump into hyperspace, carrying their passengers across the galaxy in luxury and comfort. Communications Officer Park. Sora hurried onto the bridge, her face pale and her hands shaking. She was young, probably fresh out of the Space Academy. With short black hair and nervous sighs, her uniform was wrinkled, and she kept looking back toward the passenger section like she had seen a ghost. "Captain," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need to inform you about Passenger Johnson." Woojin didn't even turn round. He was too busy admiring his reflection in the viewing screen, adjusting his captain's badge and smoothing his hair. "What about that human?" he said, dismissively. "Did she finally realize she doesn't belong in first class?" Sora took a deep breath and stepped closer. "Sir, she's Dr. Amara Johnson, the xenobiologist who saved the Centauri colonies from the Red Death Plague." Woojin's smile faded slightly, but he still didn't turn round. "So what? Humans get lucky. Sometimes, Captain." Sora's voice was getting stronger now, more urgent. "She's also the woman who developed the cure for the vegan virus that was killing your home planet's population. She saved billions of lives, including your own family." Her words hit Woojin like a meteor strike. His face went completely white, and he spun around to stare at Sora. "What did you say?" "The Red Death Plague, sir. It was spreading through the Centauri system 5 years ago. Entire planets were dying. The disease turned people's blood red and killed them in hours. No one could stop it. The best doctors in the galaxy gave up hope." Woojin's mouth went dry. He remembered the Red Death. It had been on every news channel, every communication feed. Whole civilizations had been wiped out in weeks. The death toll was in the billions. Dr. Johnson worked for 3 months without sleep. Sora continued. "She went to the infected planets when everyone else was too scared to go. She studied the disease while people were dying around her, and she found the cure." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the engines. Other crew members had stopped their work to listen. Engineer Kim Da-hoon looked up from his console, his eyes wide. Navigation Officer Lee Hae-won turned in her chair, staring at the captain and the vegan virus. Sora went on, her voice getting stronger. "It was killing the population of Kepler 440b. Your home planet, sir. The virus attacked the nervous system. People couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The death rate was 90%. Woojin felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. He remembered the vegan virus too. His own grandmother had caught it. His little sister had been in the hospital for weeks, fighting for her life. The entire planet had been preparing for extinction. Dr. Johnson created the cure in her laboratory. Sora continued. She worked alone because the virus was too dangerous for a team. She infected herself with it to test the cure. She nearly died. But she saved your planet. She saved your family. The news was spreading through the ship like wildfire. Crew members were whispering to each other, checking their personal data pads. Confirming the information, the story was all there in the galactic medical databases. Dr. Amara Johnson, the woman who had saved more lives than any person in galactic history. Down in the first-class cabin. Something amazing was happening. The blue-skinned Altarian businessman had looked up Dr. Johnson's name on his personal device. His eyes had grown wide with recognition and respect. He stood up from his seat and walked over to her. Dr. Johnson. He said, bowing deeply, "You saved my home world from the crystal plague. My children are alive because of you." Dr. Johnson looked up from her research, surprised by the interruption. "Oh, you're from Altair 7. How are the recovery efforts going?" "Perfectly. Thanks to your cure," the businessman said. "Please, allow me to upgrade your meal to the finest cuisine we have aboard." The Crystal family from the Vega system had heard the conversation. They began to glow brighter, which was their way of showing excitement and respect. The mother of the family approached Dr. Johnson with tears sparkling in her crystal eyes. "Doctor, you are the reason my species still exists," she said in a voice like ringing bells. "The shadow virus would have destroyed us all. You worked for months to understand our unique biology and create a cure just for us. Double quotes soon." Passengers were getting up from their seats all around the cabin. A mechanical being from the robot collective rolled forward on its silver wheels. Its red eyes blinked in a pattern that meant deep respect. "Dr. Johnson, you saved my creators when the logic virus infected their planet." The robot said in its electronic voice, "You are honored in our memory banks as the greatest healer in galactic history." Dr. Johnson smiled warmly at each passenger, remembering their worlds and their struggles. She had personal stories about every cure she had developed, every planet she had saved. She spoke to each alien in their own language, asked about their families, remembered details about their civilizations. Back on the bridge, Wujin watched the scene on the security monitors. His chest felt tight, and his hands were shaking. He had just publicly humiliated the most respected person in the galaxy, the woman who had saved his own life and the lives of everyone he loved. The greatest hero in galactic history had been sitting quietly in first class, and he had treated her like garbage. The Nova Genesis glided smoothly through space, its passengers enjoying the luxury of interstellar travel. Captain Wujin had retreated to his quarters after learning about Dr. Johnson's identity. Too embarrassed to face his crew, the ship's automated systems handled the routine hyperspace jump, and everything seemed peaceful. Then space itself began to scream. The first sign of trouble was a strange humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The lights flickered, and passengers looked up from their meals and entertainment with confused expressions. The Crystal family's glow dimmed with worry. And the robotic passengers' eyes began blinking rapidly as they detected unusual energy. Readings. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently to one side. Passengers were thrown from their seats, and glasses shattered on the floor. The beautiful holographic art displays flickered and died, leaving the corridors in emergency lighting that painted everything red. "What's happening?" screamed a terrified passenger as she clung to her seat. Through the viewing windows, they could see it. A massive wall of twisted energy stretched across space like a living nightmare. It was dark, purple and black, with lightning crackling through it in patterns that hurt to look at. The storm was easily 100 times larger than their ship, and it was pulling them in like a hungry monster on the bridge. Alarms began screaming. Red warning lights flashed everywhere, and the computer's voice announced dangers faster than anyone could process them. "Emergency protocols activated," shouted engineer Kim Do-hoon from his station. His face was covered in sweat as he frantically pressed buttons and pulled levers, hull integrity failing. "All systems compromised," the main viewing screen showed. Readings that made no sense. Energy levels were jumping wildly. The ship's shields were dropping rapidly, and the hull was beginning to crack under the immense pressure of the storm. "Captain to the bridge," Do-hoon yelled into his communicator. "We need you now." Woo-jin ran onto the bridge, his uniform disheveled and his face pale with terror. He had never seen anything like this in all his years of training. The storm was unlike anything. In the galactic databases, it seemed to be made of pure chaos, energy that followed no known laws of physics. "Report," he shouted, trying to sound confident even though his voice was shaking. "Dark energy storm, sir," said Navigation Officer Lee Hee-won, her fingers flying over her controls. It appeared out of nowhere. Our sensors didn't detect it until we were already inside it. Dark energy storms were legendary among spacers. They were rare, unpredictable, and absolutely deadly. Ships that encountered them were never seen again. The storms seemed to feed on technology itself, turning advanced systems into scrap metal in minutes. "Activate emergency shields," Woo-jin ordered. "Already tried, sir. The storm is draining our power faster than we can generate it," Do-hoon replied. "Hull breach on deck 7. Life support failing on decks 3 through 6. The ship shuddered again, and this time they could hear the terrible sound of metal tearing through the walls. They could hear passengers screaming in terror. The artificial gravity flickered on and off, causing people to float and then crash back down. "Try rerouting power from the engines," Woo-jin said desperately. "Sir, if we do that, we'll lose propulsion. We'll be trapped in the storm forever." Lee Hee-won warned. "We are already trapped," Woo-jin shouted. "Do it." They rerouted the power. But it made no difference. The storm continued to tear at their ship like a wild animal. The hull integrity dropped to 50%, then 40, then 30. At 20%, the ship would break apart completely. The alien crew members were panicking now. The blue-skinned Altarian communications officer was speaking rapidly in his native language, probably praying to his gods. The mechanical crew members were running diagnostics on themselves, trying to figure out why their advanced systems were failing so badly. "Captain," Do-hoon said quietly, "I don't think we're going to make it." Woo-jin stared at the readings on his screen. Everything they had tried had failed. Their most advanced technology, their centuries of experience, their pride in their superior civilization, none of it mattered against the raw power of the storm. That's when the bridge doors opened and Dr. Johnson walked in. She moved with the same calm confidence she had shown in the first-class cabin, while everyone else was running down in panic. She seemed completely at peace. Her dark eyes took in the situation quickly, scanning the displays and listening to the sounds of the failing ship. "Captain," she said simply, "with your permission, I'd like to help." Woo-jin turned to look at her, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. Here was the woman he had humiliated, the woman he had told didn't belong on his ship, and now she was offering to save them all. His pride wanted to refuse. His training told him that humans couldn't understand technology advanced enough to help, but his terror and desperation were stronger than his prejudice. "Please, Dr. Johnson," he said, his voice cracking with emotion, "save us." The bridge fell silent except for the alarms and the sound of the storm tearing at their hull. Every crew member turned to look at the human woman who had just become their only hope. Dr. Johnson rolled up her sleeves and walked to the main console. "Show me everything," she said. "Every reading, every system status, every piece of data you have about this storm," as the information flowed across the screens. Dr. Johnson's eyes began to light up with understanding, while the alien crew saw only chaos and destruction. She was beginning to see patterns. The storm wasn't random at all. It was following rules, just not the rules anyone expected. "This isn't just a storm," she said quietly. "It's alive." Dr. Johnson moved to the main control console, while the alien crew stood frozen in disbelief. Their training manuals had no answers for this situation. Every emergency procedure they tried made things worse. The storm seemed to adapt to their technology, growing stronger each time they used their advanced systems. "Move aside," Dr. Johnson said gently to Engineer Kim Da-hoon, who was frantically pressing buttons on his console. "Let me see what we're dealing with." Da-hoon stepped back, his face covered in sweat. "Doctor, our quantum processors can't analyze the storm's energy patterns. It's too chaotic, too unpredictable." Double quotes. Dr. Johnson smiled and placed her hands on the controls. "That's because you're thinking like engineers. I'm thinking like a biologist." She began studying the storm through the sensors, but instead of looking at energy readings and mathematical formulas, she watched how it moved. The storm wasn't just random chaos. It had rhythms, patterns, almost like a heartbeat. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the display. "See how the energy pulses every 4.7 seconds. And notice how it reaches out toward our ship in waves." Chief Engineer Lee Hae-won moved closer to see what Dr. Johnson was pointing at. "I don't understand, Doctor. It's just chaotic energy." "No, it's not," Dr. Johnson said, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "It's hunting. This storm's behaving exactly like a virus I studied on Proxima Centauri 3 years ago. The virus would attach to healthy cells and drain their energy to reproduce." The bridge crew looked at each other in confusion. How could a space storm behave like a virus? It made no sense according to their understanding of physics. Dr. Johnson's fingers flew over the control panels, calling up different displays and sensor readings. "The storm feeds on structured energy, the kind that powers our ship's systems, our shields, our engines, our life support. They all produce organized, predictable energy patterns." "But that's impossible," protested Navigation Officer Park. "Sora, energy is energy. It can't be alive." "Can't it?" Dr. Johnson asked. "On my home planet, we have lightning storms that seem to learn and adapt. In the Vega system, there are energy beings that live in the hearts of stars. The universe is full of life we don't understand." She began making changes to the ship's power systems, but her approach was completely different from anything the crew had seen before. Instead of trying to fight the storm with more power, she was making their energy signature irregular and unpredictable. "The storm feeds on structured energy," she explained, her hands moving quickly over the controls. "We need to disrupt its feeding pattern, make our energy taste bad, so to speak." Working with Chief Engineer Lee Hae-won, she began routing power systems in ways that violated every safety protocol in the Galactic Handbook. The alien crew watched in horror. She deliberately created power imbalances and energy fluctuations that should have caused the ship to explode. "Doctor, what you're doing is extremely dangerous," Lee Hae-won warned. "Those power couplings weren't designed to handle irregular energy flows." "I know," Dr. Johnson replied calmly. "But predictable energy flows are exactly what the storm wants to eat. We need to become unappetizing." Her approach was born from years of studying unpredictable alien diseases. She had learned that sometimes the best way to fight a pathogen wasn't with brute force, but with cunning. Make the host environment unsuitable for the invader. Reverse the polarity on decks 3 and 7, but maintain standard flow on deck 5. She directed, create an energy signature that the storm can't absorb. The crew hesitated. What she was asking them to do went against everything they had learned in engineering school. It was chaotic, dangerous, and theoretically impossible. Do it, Captain Woojin said quietly. She's our only hope. Lee Hae-won began making the changes, her hands shaking as she violated one safety protocol after another. The ship's systems began operating in ways they were never designed for. Power flowed backward through some circuits while surging forward through others. The energy signature became completely unpredictable, and then something amazing happened. The storm's grip on their ship began to weaken. The terrible tearing sound of metal under stress started to fade. The hull integrity readings stopped dropping and began to stabilize. It's working, Da-hoon whispered in amazement. The storm is losing interest in us. Double quotes. Dr. Johnson watched the sensors carefully, tracking the storm's behavior like a scientist studying a laboratory specimen. It's confused, she said with satisfaction. Our energy signature is no longer the type it can feed on. We're becoming invisible to it. The alien crew members stared in wonder as their most advanced computers and systems had failed. But one human woman with a different way of thinking had found the solution. She hadn't used superior technology or advanced mathematics. She had used creativity, intuition, and the ability to see patterns where others saw only chaos. How did you know this would work? Asked Communications Officer Park So-Raw. Dr. Johnson smiled. I didn't know for certain, but I've learned that the universe is full of surprises. Sometimes the most impossible solution is the right one, as the ship slowly escaped the storm's grip. The crew watched in amazement. The readings showed. They're moving away from the dangerous energy field, their hull integrity improving with each passing minute. We're free, Lee Hae-won said, hardly believing it herself, through the viewing screen. They could see the storm continuing to rage in the distance, but it was no longer interested in their ship. Dr. Johnson had made them invisible to a force that had destroyed countless vessels before them. The entire bridge crew turned to look at the human woman who had saved them all. She was calmly shutting down the irregular power flows and returning their systems to normal operation, as if saving a ship full of aliens was just another day at the office. Captain Woojin stared at her in complete amazement. The woman he had humiliated for being human had just proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or weapons. It was the ability to think differently, to find solutions where others saw only problems. The Nova Genesis slowly made its way toward the nearest space station, its hull scarred but intact. Dr. Johnson had saved all 847 souls aboard, from the smallest alien child to the most advanced robotic passenger. The ship's systems hummed quietly as they returned to normal operation, but the crew would never forget what they had witnessed. In the first-class cabin, passengers gathered round Dr. Johnson like she was a living legend. The blue-skinned Altarian businessman was telling everyone about how she had saved his home world. The Crystal family was glowing brighter than ever, their way of showing pure joy and gratitude. Even the mechanical passengers were displaying holographic flowers from their internal projectors, a rare sign of emotion from their species. Doctor, said the Crystal Mother, her voice like beautiful music, you have saved us twice now. First, our world, and now our lives. Dr. Johnson smiled warmly. I'm just glad everyone is safe. That's what matters most. But while the passengers celebrated, something else was happening across the galaxy. The story of what had occurred aboard the Nova Genesis was spreading through the Galactic Federation networks faster than light itself. Communications Officer Park So-ra had filed her official report. describing not only Dr. Johnson's heroic rescue, but also Captain Woojin's shameful behavior. The report detailed how the captain had publicly humiliated the galaxy's greatest hero, treating her like she was worthless simply because she was human. Within hours, the story was on every news feed, every communication channel, every social media platform across thousands of worlds. The headline read, "Human hero saves bigoted captain who insulted her." On the bridge, Woojin sat alone in his captain's chair, staring at the incoming messages flooding his personal communicator. His hands shook as he read comment after comment from beings across the galaxy, all expressing their disgust at his behavior. "How could you treat Dr. Johnson that way?" wrote a young Altarian student. "She saved my grandfather's life during the Red Death Plague. My entire species exists because of her." Posted a crystal being from the Vega system, and who told her she didn't belong in first class. "Shame on you." The messages kept coming, thousands of them from every corner of the galaxy. Beings whose lives had been saved by Dr. Johnson's work were horrified to learn how she had been treated. Then came the call that ended everything. The main communication screen flickered to life, showing the stern face of Admiral Choi Sun-hee, the highest-ranking officer in the Galactic Federation fleet. Her uniform was covered in medals and ribbons, showing her decades of distinguished service. Her dark eyes were filled with cold anger. "Captain Kang," she said, her voice cutting through the bridge like a laser, "you are hereby relieved of duty. Your conduct toward Dr. Johnson is a disgrace to the Federation, to your uniform, and to everything we stand for." Woojin felt his world crumbling round him. "Admiral, please, I can explain." "There is no explanation," Admiral Choi interrupted. "You publicly humiliated the woman who has saved more lives than anyone in galactic history. You judged her by her species rather than her character. You have violated every principle the Federation was founded on." The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as their captain's career ended in real time. Do-hoon looked away, embarrassed. For his former commander, Lee Hae-won shook her head in disappointment. They had all witnessed Woojin's behavior, and none of them could defend it. Furthermore, Admiral Choi continued, "Your actions nearly cost the lives of 847 innocent beings. If Dr. Johnson had not been aboard to save you from your own incompetence, you would have been responsible for one of the worst disasters in Federation history." The communication ended, leaving Woojin alone with his shame. Within minutes, security officers would board the ship at the next station to escort him away. His name would be removed from all Federation records. He would never command a ship again. As the Nova Genesis docked at Starbase Rora, news reporters from across the galaxy were already waiting. They wanted to interview Dr. Johnson, to hear her side of the story, to understand how she had remained so calm in the face of such hatred. But Dr. Johnson had no interest in revenge or publicity. She gathered her research materials and prepared to leave the ship quietly, just as she had boarded it. That's when Woojin approached her one final time. He looked terrible. His uniform was wrinkled, his eyes were red from crying, and his hands trembled as he walked toward her. The other passengers watched as the disgraced captain stood before the woman he had insulted. "Dr. Johnson," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I need to apologize. What I did was unforgivable. You saved us all, and I treated you like garbage." Dr. Johnson looked at him with the same calm dignity she had shown throughout the entire ordeal. There was no anger in her eyes, no desire for revenge, just the quiet strength that had made her a legend across the galaxy. "Perhaps next time, Captain," she said quietly, "you'll judge people by their character rather than their species." She didn't wait for his response. She simply picked up her bags and walked off the ship, leaving Woojin standing alone in the corridor. The story of the Nova Genesis became legend throughout the galaxy. It was told in classrooms on distant worlds, shared in military academies, and passed down through generations. It became a reminder that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or weapons, but the ability to adapt, innovate, and maintain dignity under pressure. Dr. Johnson returned to her research, her reputation, enhanced not by the crisis she had solved, but by the grace she had shown in the face of hatred. She continued her work saving lives across the galaxy, treating every species with the same respect and compassion, regardless of how they treated her dot and somewhere in the vast darkness of space. The story continued to spread, inspiring beings everywhere to look beyond the surface and see the true character that lies within. The end.